everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Pritika and this is Mama Hustle. I'm a mom of two, a 5-year-old and a 11-month-old, and today I wanted to talk about baby-led weaning in the Indian context. So let's get started. If you already know what baby-led weaning is, and if you don't, I would recommend you look at a couple of YouTube videos that I'm going to link down below. And once you have taken a look at that, you can come back here. But in a nutshell, very simplistically, baby-led weaning is about giving the baby control of their food when you start solids with them. You start introducing solid foods. So the traditional way of weaning is you give them pureed foods and things like that. But in baby-led weaning, you give baby like whole foods, safe to consume foods, so like soft fruits and vegetables and things like that, and then let them take control of how much they want to eat and what they want to eat on their plate. And this goes back to the Montessori philosophy of division of responsibility on the meal tables for children. So basically, the division of responsibility is that the caregiver decides what food needs to be offered, where it needs to be offered, so at the dining table or the floor, wherever, and and at what time the food needs to be offered. And it is the babies and the toddlers or the kids' responsibility to decide what they are going to eat from the plate that has been offered to them and how much of it they're going to eat. So that is what the division of responsibility is basically, and that's what baby-led weaning is. There are various advantages of that, obviously, and to know those advantages, I would recommend you look at the videos that I've linked down below. Otherwise, this video will be just too long. So this video is about talking about baby-led weaning in the Indian context, because I don't think there is enough information around that on YouTube and on Instagram and things like that. So that's what this is about. So I'm going to talk about my journey as a mum, or first-time mum, of following baby-led weaning with my first daughter, and now I'm doing it with my second child as well. When I had my first daughter, I knew that the traditional way of weaning was serving pureed foods, khichdi, all of that kind of stuff. And I had seen a lot of my friends and family sort of running behind their kids with a bowl and a spoon and sort of feeding them. And I had also seen kids who sat on a table along with the rest of the family and eat food. And I definitely wanted my child to be in the latter, but I didn't know what steps I could take to get to that position. I just figured that those kids would be just great eaters to begin with, but that isn't the case, and this is something that needs to be inculcated. And this is what I was introduced. I was a part of a breastfeeding group on Facebook, and somebody there mentioned about baby-led weaning around the time my daughter was around 5 months of age, and I was really intrigued by the subject. And I looked at a lot of YouTube videos around that. There was a Facebook group that I joined that I highly recommend you join. I'll link it down below as well. And then I read the baby-led weaning book and I was completely sold. And I spoke to my husband about it as well, and I brought him on board as well, that once our daughter hits the 6-month age and we start weaning, I am not going to serve her pureed foods. I'm going to serve her whole foods, foods from my plate, from the family's dinner table basically, and see how that goes. And he was on board with it, and so our baby-led weaning journey began. So the first food that I offered my daughter was just finger foods, so like soft fruit mainly. I started with banana, so long lengthways slices of banana, soft pear, so pear that I had steamed, pear slices that I had steamed, apple slices that I had steamed. Moved on to vegetables and soft vegetables. So I would steam vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, carrot, all of that, and then slowly again moved on to stuff like rice, chapatis, everything that we were eating. I would just hand her from my plate, and obviously making sure that it was not a choking hazard. It was easily she could swallow it really easily, and also she could hold things in her hand really easily. So pieces of bread, pieces of pasta, all kind of things which are not choking hazards, and that she could actually hold. And the first 1 or 2 months, she didn't really eat much. She just threw stuff that was offered to her, and she sort of just tasted a couple of bites here and there. But that is something that is totally to be expected in baby-led weaning, and over a period of time they learn to eat properly and things like that. Now, it is a long process and it requires some amount of learning. But what you will notice is that the first time that I fed her something, she started to chew. So she knew how to chew. And when you offer purees to babies, they kind of forget that. They just started to swallow the food that you serve them. And they don't really know that they're supposed to chew before they swallow. But with my daughter, she knew that she was supposed to chew the food that I served her immediately. It was very instinctive to her. And so I knew that I was on the right path to baby-led weaning. And over the next few months, she just got better and better. I have videos of her just getting better and better at eating food. So at around 7 to 8 months, she started to hold food properly. By the time she was about 10 to 11 months of age, she could actually eat food on her own pretty easily. And all of the people that were sort of really amazed at the fact that I was not serving her purees, started to see the benefits of baby-led weaning. By around 1 year of age, she was pretty much eating whatever we served her. Obviously, there's an appetite drop that happens at 1 year, but she was pretty much independent on her own, eating with the rest of the family, and it was not a problem at all. Talk a little bit about the difference between baby-led weaning and the traditional Indian way of weaning, which is that we start with stuff like dal soup, so thin dal soups, khichdi and all of that. So if you think about thin dal soups and dal ka pani as we call it in India, it's actually not a very nutritionally sound food to give. It's basically water, boiled water with a little bit of dal in it. And the problem with that is that you're serving it to the baby. So first of all, it isn't particularly delicious. And secondly is that you're serving this to the baby and you're filling their stomach with something that isn't very nutritionally dense, and they don't drink milk because of that, because their stomach is filled with dal soups and things like that. So it isn't really a very I would say, according to me, it's not the best nutritional food to give to the baby. You are filling the stomach so that they are not drinking what is nutritionally made for them, which is breast milk and formula. And something that I didn't mention earlier in this video is that your baby's main source of nutrition in the beginning is in the first year of their life is actually breast milk and formula. It isn't food that you serve them. So there is a saying that says food before one is just for fun, and that is totally true. To eat regular food is a learned skill, and your baby is not going to immediately start eating all the solids, and it's not going to be their main source of nutrition for the first 1 year. And that's something that I feel like traditional weaning really leans on. They sort of really start to reduce like breast milk and formula, and their traditional weaning requires babies to eat at least that much porridge, at least that much khichdi in that bowl that is served, and that leads to spoon feeding and force feeding and all of those kind of things that I really want to avoid with my children. And so I feel like that is one issue that I saw with traditional weaning, is that food was not very nutritionally dense. The second thing was I think the traditional Indian weaning focuses a lot on serving the same foods again and again. So khichdi, upma, all of those kind of very starchy, calorie-rich foods, serving to the babies again and again, the same thing every day. Ragi porridge is a big thing as well. And it kind of gets boring for the baby. If you were to eat those foods every day, you would get bored as well. And so baby-led weaning actually focuses on offering a variety of foods, variety of flavors, textures, so that the baby doesn't really get bored and they are intrigued and they sort of want to eat the food that's served to them. But traditional weaning, I've noticed it's the same food again and again, and that can get very repetitive for the baby. Traditional weaning in India also is very spoon feeding led, and I have seen baby kids as old as 3-4 years being spoon fed, because that's something that is done in our country. And I feel like that is a little bit of a and that might work for you and your family. If that works for you, that's I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it if that's something that works for your family. But for my family, I really wanted to have an independent child who would eat with us at the table like everybody else and learn from us about how to eat things. I didn't want to be spoon feeding and force feeding my child. That's not something that I wanted to see for my family. What I wanted to do was inculcate a sense of independence in them. They could choose how much ever they wanted to eat, how they wanted to eat it. Yes, it's a messy process when a baby eats on their own. I would spend 15 minutes sometimes cleaning up after them, but that is a price I was willing to pay for a long-term benefit, which was that at the age of around 1.5 or so, my daughter was not as messy as she was before, and she was completely eating by herself, and I didn't have to do anything in that sense. As long as I offered healthy, nutritionally dense food, I felt pretty confident that my daughter knew what she was doing and how much she wanted to eat. All right, so it's we need to talk about the social aspect of it, because obviously you are surrounded by family in India. You have your mom, you have your mother-in-law, father-in-law, your dad, and they, when I told my mom and my mother-in-law about what I was doing with my daughter is not serving her pureed foods, they were absolutely horrified, because they spoke about choking hazard. They spoke about the fact that babies don't know how much they need to eat. They were really worried. To be very honest, before the age of 1, my daughter hardly ate more than 3 to 4 bites of anything that was served to her. And now she's 5 years old and she eats pretty much everything we serve. She's not the biggest fan of vegetables, but she's a normal, healthy child. And I would say even till about the age of 18 months, she hardly ate anything. And by hardly ate anything, I mean in the traditional sense, she didn't eat much. Kids her age, I would say, would be eating like an entire bowl of khichdi or dal rice, or one full paratha. But Anaya wasn't really eating as much, and I wasn't really worried about it, because A, she was gaining weight at a healthy rate anyways. She was active, she was sleeping well, so I wasn't really worried about it. But for my the rest of my family, it was really radical idea that you do not spoon feed a baby. You let them make a mess. You don't count how many pieces of chapati they've eaten. You don't count how many spoons of khichdi they've eaten. You don't force feed them into eating. And I really had to speak to them about it. I had to um, overlook a lot of the criticism, and there will be some criticism, obviously, because that is how we have traditionally weaned babies. We don't let them eat on their own, and that is totally fine. That is totally understandable. The key here is not to get worked up. You have done your research. If you've done your research, and if you're offering your baby healthy meals and rich in protein, rich in iron, rich in calcium, in vitamin C, if you're making sure all of those things are there, your job as a parent kind of ends after serving the plate to the baby, and then you completely trust your baby or toddler. And there will be times that they will not eat anything. 1 year olds, for example, their appetite drops drastically at around 1 to 1.5 year of age, because their growth rate has reduced. 2-year-old toddlers are more interested in exploring their environment than eating, sitting on a high chair and eating. But all of those things are a part and parcel of things. Those phases do pass. I promise you they do. And you continue with breastfeeding and formula and all of those things just to supplement the nutrition part of it. But trust that your kids know how hungry they are, and they know how much they need to eat as well. So keep at it. If you're facing pressure on the family side, they will eventually come around when they actually start seeing your baby eat on his own or her own. It's a pretty awesome thing to watch. Now my family is complete converts. I remember my mother-in-law was telling one of her friends that my 18-month-old daughter eats completely by herself, and that was a big moment for me, because she finally did see the advantages of baby-led weaning. So as far as the health aspect of it, again, I would urge you to look at all of the resources that I'm linking down below. There are some great Instagram accounts There are some great YouTube videos on what kind of food you need to serve. There are books as well, but you need to make sure that you do serve a well-balanced diet. So the food that you serve is not only rich in like carbohydrates, so like rice, chapatis, bread, pastas, but you also need to add vegetables, you also need to add fruit, you also need to serve things that are rich in iron, so broccoli, spinach, if you're a non-vegetarian, chicken, fish, eggs, things like that, which are iron rich foods. Those things are really important to make sure that you're serving your kids a well-balanced diet. If you're a vegetarian, there are some great iron sources as well. And I have a video coming up in the next few weeks about that. But you need to make sure that you do serve a balanced diet to them. You also need to make sure that the food that you serve is not a choking hazard. So what I mean by that is that the baby should be able to hold whatever that it is that you serve and squish it between their fingers. So if you're serving them carrots, it needs to be steamed cooked carrots. If you're serving them cucumbers, for example, you need to only be serving the fleshy part of the cucumber and not the hard part of the cucumber. If you're serving beetroot, it needs to be steamed. If you're serving toast, it needs to be semi-soft toast and not hard toast. So all of those things you need to make sure when you're thinking about what you need to serve the baby. So I know this video is going to get long, and this is actually the first in a series of videos that I'm going to do about baby-led weaning, because I get so many questions about that on my Instagram. But I wanted to close with the benefits that I've seen of baby-led weaning. So firstly, I didn't have to spoon feed ever any of my children. I never did that with them. My kids are pretty independent. My daughter, at least, is pretty independent on the dinner table. Very healthy relationship with food, so she doesn't dread meal times. I've seen some kids do. She looks forward to meals. She loves trying out new things, so that is another advantage. She's not necessarily a not fussy eater. I know a lot of people say that baby-led weaning can lead to your kids not being fussy about food, and I don't think that's necessarily true. That certainly wasn't the case with me up till very recently, till she was about 4 years of age, and I hated vegetables. She didn't like eating many of them, and that was fine. That was her choice, and I gave her that. Advantage for me really is that meal times at my house are a celebration, and they're not something to be dreaded. Everybody eats food together, including the baby, and I'm really happy that I did follow baby-led weaning with my daughter and now with my son. The next few videos in this series will all be about